Cash? A check, maybe? Gift card? Let's see.
Recently, someone mentioned to me the movie released in 2025, I Know What You Did Last Summer. I had heard of I Know What You Did Last Summer before, but had no knowledge of the movies, nor was aware that a new film had joined the original three. This person is an avid fan of the original film, and apparently the new edition is so bad, they quit within the first 20 minutes. Instantly, my curiosity was piqued. How bad does a remake have to be for a fan to refuse to finish the film? And I Know What You Did Last Summer also provided me a unique opportunity. As someone who knows next to nothing about the original film, I could go into this movie without an initial bias. And even better, I could watch the 2025 I Know What You Did Last Summer first, then watch the original and compare it. So, for today, this video is going to be split into two parts. The first is an honest and unbiased review of the 2025 remake without having seen the prior movies. The second part will be a reflection upon the remake after watching the original. Although this might be an odd method of comparing a remake with the original, I think it's more fun going in blind, and I think will make for more interesting commentary. 2025's I Know What You Did Last Summer opens with a generic pop song playing over crashing waves. Immediately, my hopes for this movie dipped a bit. Pop music opening a horror movie or slasher film is generally a letdown. Music is meant to establish the genre and the atmosphere of the movie, so a peppier song builds an expectation of a genre targeting younger teens, shows like Euphoria or Riverdale. An edgier, more rock or indie song would better suit a horror film, but the movie has just begun, and my opinion is biased. It's formed from negative experiences from other horror movies that opened with pop songs only to be extremely disappointing. The music cuts and we meet our main character Ava. She enters her house before another song plays during a montage of her unpacking and getting ready for an event. Ava struggles finding a good dress, takes a weed break, and gets back to it. Pop music is not the only thing now dampening my hopes. Our first taste of dialogue is matching my fear that this is something targeting a different audience. Here's the dialogue, word for word. I would show the scene, but YouTube will nuke the video like it did the second half of my Jurassic World Rebirth commentary, so I will sadly be reading off the lines. Oh Milo, what are you doing at our best friend's engagement party? He's your high school boyfriend, why do you still care? The dress sucks. You're going to have a great night, miss you mom. This is a common problem of telling and not showing. The dialogue is entirely plot heavy and had me wincing in pain. This information can easily be shown to us. Maybe instead of our first introduction to Ava be her getting ready, maybe she's dropping flowers off at her mom's grave before heading home. And 5 minutes from the scene, we actually learn the party is an engagement party and Milo was our high school boyfriend, so Ava telling the audience this is redundant. I was incorrect about the problem. The problem is not telling instead of showing, it's telling and showing and commonly telling again. The engagement party introduces 3 other main characters, Danica, Milo, and Teddy. The engagement party is for Danica and Teddy, although the group leaves the party as it's ending to go see 4th of July fireworks. But along the way, they run into Stevie, an old friend from high school. She joins our group, and the movie switches to the gang being reckless inside the car. They swerve a bit, but the car reaches the lookout point without any issue. While waiting on the fireworks, a high and possibly intoxicated Teddy begins messing around in the road. The first car manages to pass them without issue, but a second car ends up swerving into the guardrail. The group tries to help, but the car ends up falling into the rocks below. They call 911 and eventually leave the scene, making a pact never to tell anyone about what happened that night. Fast forward a year, the group reunite for Danica's coming wedding, and during the party, Danica receives a threatening message, I know what you did last summer, roll title screen. A normal summary won't work well with this style of movie because there are a lot of side plots. The main overarching plot is a killer targeting the group in retaliation to last summer, but side plot A complicates that storyline. Side plot A is a series of murders that actually occurred in 1977. The current killer has the same MO of the past killer, a fisherman's outfit and hook as a weapon, so it is possible that it's the same killer. Side plot A also connects to side plot B B, introducing 2 more characters, Julie and Ray, survivors of the original 1977 murders. There is also Side Plot C. The group is uncovering and fighting against corruption within the police force, in which some police officers have a deal with the wealthier members of the Southport community. But don't forget Side Plot D, where a podcast host comes to town to cover the original 1977 murders and might be a copycat killer. But it would also be a mistake to forget Side Plot E, which is the local church might have a hand in the murders, as the man that died in the car was a member of the congregation. All these side plots on their own sound interesting, but unfortunately, Side Plot C, D, and E don't matter except to throw around red herrings. The killer goes from being a suspected member of the 5 main characters to the podcast host, to a ghost, to a copycat killer, to the pastor, before being revealed to be Stevie. She despises the other 4 characters because she had a close relationship with the man that died that night, and once Stevie is taken care of, the movie then reveals there was actually a second killer, Ray, a survivor from the 1977 murders, who apparently became a killer from years of unresolved trauma. Trauma is the main theme of Side Plot B. Ray and Julie talk about their trauma, the effects of trauma, the traumatic attack, the traumatic return of the killer, and how they're handling said trauma. You might have noticed, but the movie really likes that word, and sadly, the mental aspect of these attacks ends up feeling tedious and annoying, even though it could have been really interesting. I actually enjoy media that focuses on a person working through or struggling from a traumatic event or past, like Prodigal Son. The problem with the 2025 remake is not trauma, but poor presentation of trauma. In Prodigal Son, the show shows us how his experience as a child is impacting his adult life in a tangible and heartbreaking way, damaging his relationships, his career, and impacting his health. Compare that to I Know What You Did Last Summer, which leaves no room for subtlety. The word trauma is repeatedly spoken, just thrown at the audience constantly, and the movie doesn't actually show us how trauma has impacted the lives of past and present survivors. Julie and Ray are functioning adults throughout the movie, appearing relatively stable until the last 5 minutes where Ray is revealed as a second killer. This could have been a grounded twist, and commentary on unresolved trauma or grief can be emotionally impactful, but the reveal is not deserved because it's not properly established. Although I hate to make this assumption, it does feel as though none of the writers have truly experienced a horrifying, life-shattering, or heartbreaking event with the way trauma is presented throughout the film. Take our supposed main character Ava. She is meant to be the person the audience roots for. She is the character that didn't want to leave, but other than not speaking with the other characters for a year, she shows no outwardly signs of mental or physical struggles with that night. Truthfully, none of our main cast are super broken up about it. Their relationships with each other might have changed. Ava hasn't talked with anyone for almost a year, the engagement between Danica and Teddy was ended, but otherwise, their lives seem pretty great. They have relationships with other people, their careers are going good, and they look and act exactly the same as when we first saw them. All 4 act like their friendships dissolved over a bad or awkward argument instead of, being involved in a man's death. The few times remorse is seen in the film is directly connected to the killer, which implies it's less guilt and more fear over being caught. A little kid crying because their hand is caught in the cookie jar. But I think my biggest issue with this movie, while not having any knowledge from the original, is the movie is meh. The soundtrack is meh. The acting is meh. No one stands out except for a few scenes with Danica and Stevie's reveal. The script is meh, having multiple side plots only serving to take time away from the more relevant and interesting plots. Side plot A and side plot B, where the main characters are exploring the history of the original 1977 murders and searching for the killer, were the only plots needed for this film. I wish the movie had been a little bit more mysterious, exploring more whether it was a return of that killer, a copycat, someone actually aware of that night last summer, or even a ghost. Adding a more supernatural aspect, even without a supernatural entity, could have really worked well in this movie. Also, whenever a character mentions 1977, or whenever the 1977 survivors appear, there's the weirdest pause, almost like a mic drop moment that feels really out of place. There was a brief appearance of one of the girls murdered in 1977 in a dream sequence, which could have easily played with the idea of a supernatural aspect, leaving it up to the audience whether or not this was a ghost or a side effect of taking sleep medication. But ultimately, this dream sequence is there for no reason, which is tragic because the set design immediately caught my attention, with a brief character basically overshadowing the rest of the cast. And speaking of characters, the main cast is also meh. I wanted to like the 5 main members, I really did, but all of them are super one-note and stereotypical. The sole character with charm and style realization was the podcast host, but she's killed within the first half. Disappointing because the actor was really selling that character. The kills exist, I suppose. They weren't super memorable and they lacked suspense. The sole interesting kill was a chase sequence with the podcast host in an elevator, and the ending of her swinging is a great touch. But even the main catalyst behind the whole movie is meh, which is really bad because that means the entire rest of the film is propped up on an idea that holds no weight and feels silly rather than serious. The main cause of the crash and the death of an innocent man isn't the result of an intoxicated or distracted driver, but a character standing in the middle of the road. This complicates the story because the character's actions make no sense when they bring up manslaughter or murder, as the one truly at fault is the driver. The driver is speeding in the dark on a curve of road known to locals for its number of car accidents and fatalities. What would have happened had the gang not been watching fireworks? But it was a car broken down the side of the road needing help from a driver that wasn't paying attention. Being a good driver isn't simply being aware of traffic laws and reacting to other cars, but being aware that pedestrians, hikers, bikers, and animals all have access to roadways. From my perspective, the car rammed into the guardrails from the negligence of a speeding driver, not from the actions of the main cast. I'm not sure how the original did this scene, but there must be something missing for the remake because this plot point is extremely weak. When all the other characters mention murder, manslaughter, or covering it up, I could only think that that was ridiculous and it ruined my experience. The driver was at fault. The group tried to help and get him out of the car, and even called emergency services as soon as it fell. What more are they supposed to do? Should someone have stayed and provided a statement for police? Yes. But nothing about giving a statement could have helped that man, nor would they probably receive any charges that I can think of with my limited knowledge of criminal proceedings. This is a similar problem to Jurassic World Rebirth. The writers don't fully commit to the plot point of murder. Instead, they created a scene that's vague and highly questionable and leaves the audience confused and a little dumbfounded. Now, the movie's not all bad. Some scenes were pleasing to look at. Color was utilized fairly well, and the movie teases audiences with some interesting sets and a unique editing style we rarely see in most modern movies. Sadly, most of the movie is a straightforward eye-level or over-the-shoulder shots, except for those rare, unique moments. There is occasionally a comedic, almost satirical atmosphere I think the movie was attempting, more of an esoteric horror like the Knives Out movies, and that's another problem with the movie where this is not a horror movie. It's not a slasher movie. It's a murder mystery with a few slasher-esque kills that don't fully commit to the genre. Maybe the original is the same, but the movie is not even a good murder mystery. I guessed within the first 10 minutes the arc of each character and the motivations of the killer. I knew these two girls would survive while Milo and Teddy would not. I knew Stevie would either help the killer or be the killer. I even thought Ray might be the original killer or have a part in the current killings, and lo and behold, the movie proved me right. If you removed the more PG-13 related content like nudity and violence, this movie is a weird midway point between a Hallmark murder mystery, 2000s Disney Channel movie, and an episode of Riverdale. The movie as a whole is average. It's not my personal taste, but there is an audience that exists for it. For me, it would be a movie appearing on the television while I'm cooking in the kitchen, and I might pop my head in the living room during the kills, but otherwise, the movie would be forgotten about, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it to people. My current rating before watching the original, 4, maybe 5 out of 10. There are good moments, Stevie's reveal was fun, and the dream sequence built some suspense until the CGI appeared. There is a great movie in the bones of this script, but the final product just doesn't land. With that rating in mind, I'm now going to watch the original. Wish me luck, because I have a feeling that this rating is about to change drastically. I have made a grave mistake. I Know What You Did Last Summer 2025 is not a remake. It is a sequel, and it is a very, very bad sequel. First, laying down some groundwork for the original film takes place in 1977 with our four main characters, Julie, Helen, Ray, and Barry. The series of murders that constantly appeared in the 2025 version is a direct reference to the original killings. That is why there are those weird mic drop moments, because it's meant to be nostalgia bait. The best parts of the 2025 film is ripped directly from the original, and the worst parts are subversions of the original film. My biggest pet peeve, the car crash scene, is completely different in the original. The four characters are messing around in their car before they hit a man on the road. The 2025 version tried being clever by flipping the scene around, but it accidentally created a major moral problem. Either the person in the road is the one at fault, or the person driving the car is the one at fault. You can't have it both ways. And since the original justifiably points out that the driver has ultimate responsibility, it makes the 2025 film look even sillier. And the original does the right thing by doubling down on murder. Our main cast, intoxicated, tired, and panicked, make a terrible decision of taking the body from the road, shoving it into their trunk before dumping him into the ocean while he's still alive. It is a massive escalation of a much smaller problem, but I was fully bought in that the main characters would do this based upon the movie already establishing the quick to aggression character, the more passive nature of the other characters, their futures that are at stake, and the current setting of being intoxicated. The 2025 version completely mishandled the theme of trauma and grief. The movie constantly brings it up, but audiences see no change within the characters. It's ironic, but the original 1977 film doesn't even mention the word trauma, and yet, by good writing and good characters, audiences naturally perceive all four have been traumatized by that night. Julie looks like a completely different person, and the people around her show concern for her well-being, unable to help because they don't understand what has caused this massive change within her. Helen never realizes her dream of being an actress, and audiences are left speculating whether it was from lacking talent, bad luck, or result from mental trauma from that night. Ray is following the same lifestyle as his absent dad and carries immense guilt over the incident, while Barry has become more angry, vitriolic, and aggressive. Since that terrible night, each character has changed to some aspect or lost a potential future because of the emotional weight burdening their shoulders. The original film does this all without ever mentioning the word trauma because it doesn't need to. Audiences can connect the dots and figure out what's bothering the main cast. And another awful difference between the films is the killer. In the original, the killer enjoys tormenting the main characters. He leaves behind multiple notes, kills the people around them, even puts a body in the back of Julie's trunk covered in crabs, like the killer was trapped in their trunk, only to steal the body later so she feels like she's going crazy. It's not just the killer killing people, it is psychological torture, and it makes our characters feel paranoid, especially when no one listens to them. The 2025 version severely lacks that tension and paranoia. I felt like I was watching a Hallmark movie with my grandmother and the characters are simply walking around solving a mystery, and the twists in the new film are either redundant or predictable. The movie has the fake out with the priest, but he ends up being found dead, and both Stevie and Ray's reveal are relatively uninteresting and their motivations are weak. Stevie knew the man that died. He had helped her after rehab get her life back together. But Stevie was also one of the people present that night, and she was one of the people that didn't want to wait around for the police while having little screen time in the rest of the movie compared to the other main characters, and other than a fun change in personality, nothing truly shocking happens. And the second killer, Ray, his whole shtick is, I gazed into the eyes of the monster, I have now become that monster, and it just feels weak. In the 1977 version, the killer Ben Willis is the person that was hit by the car, unknowingly survived and carrying a grudge. He wants to kill the group because they almost killed him, and two, he was already a killer. Having your main characters in a movie begin the movie with false information presented to the main characters and the audience as truth is such a good premise. Julie and the others believe David was the man they killed. Because of this belief, he is the man they investigate, including talking to his sister, and for a majority of the film, everything lines up. David was found dead in the water following that night. David was up there mourning the death of his fiancée a year prior, and someone close to David would want to avenge him. But eventually, Julie figures out that David was not the man they killed. Instead, everything was connected to the fiancée, Susie Willis, and her father, Ben Willis. Susie's death was accidental, but Ben Willis blamed David. He actually killed David that night on the anniversary of Susie's death. That's how David's body ended up in the water. He was leaving a crime scene when our main characters hit him with their car, leading to them taking his body and dropping into the ocean, but he survives. It is a solid and grounded twist, establishing that our killer is not merely driven by revenge towards the main characters, but showing us that he's already killed a man and he has no family left. He's got nothing left to lose by doing this to them. The entire storyline, the killer, and the twist of the original completely overshadows the 2025 version. The best aspects of the 2025 version, like the elevator chase sequence I liked, is actually just a direct ripoff of the original movie, and the 2025 version disrespects the original in my opinion by taking the two surviving characters and making one a killer for what feels like no reason other than the writers wanted something interesting and they didn't really care about the original. But what might be the worst problem with the newer film is not the writers pissing on the grave of the original, but the difference between the characters and the inclusion of Southport culture. Julie, Helen, Ray, and Barry are immensely more likable characters than the characters we see in the 2025 film. Before watching the original, I was indifferent about the 2025 characters. They weren't good, they weren't terrible, they just simply existed for the plot to exist. After watching the original, I cannot stand the 2025 cast. All of them, even one meant to be quote-unquote relatable, come across as pretentious, self-absorbed, and narcissistic. Danica finds the dead body of her fiancé a month before their wedding. She cries a bit, barely, before her main response is moving on to the other nepo deadbeat in this film, completely treating the death of her fiancé as a minor inconvenience rather than the loss of her future husband and a loss of an innocent life. It would be comical if the writers weren't serious. Ava is supposed to be the new Julie, the person against what happened that night and disturbed from what she was a part of, but she lacks the personality and she lacks the heart of the original. Julie openly wants nothing to do with her past boyfriend after what happened, undergoing an immense change that creates a change in her appearance to match the guilt inside her. Ava acts like a person who feels bad because she believes she's supposed to feel bad, not because she actually cares. Other than not being as close with her friends, nothing much has changed for her. Simply look at these characters' appearances and lifestyle. Which one of these people look like they are drowning in guilt? Furthermore, Julie, Helen, Ray, and Barry are much better representation of Southport locals. The 2025 film gives me generic characters with generic backstories and generic homes that could be from anywhere. The original embraced the community aspect of Southport, highlighting the reality of living in that town. This might be personal bias though, because I actually grew up in Southport. Do these types of people exist in Southport? Yes. Do I and other Southport locals like them? Not really. Generally, these people are viewed as pariahs, not because they aren't native to Southport, but because they act fairly similar to the characters in the movie, narcissistic and extremely rude to the locals. Intentionally or unintentionally, the writers nailed the annoying behavior of the wealthier, commonly retired from New Jersey or New York members of the Southport community. They move to the area, immediately get heavily involved in city councils and meetings, and start advocating for massive change to mimic where they came from instead of embracing the culture of where they are. That change usually negatively impacts sand dunes, the wildlife, and the historical component of Southport, erasing the heritage of that community. These people want the best of both worlds. They want the roads, the houses, and the amenities of where they used to live, while also having the bragging rights of living in a small port town. The 2025 film made a big mistake focusing on the higher income side of Southport, using houses and locations that could be from anywhere, instead of mimicking the 1977 film that focused on the roots of Southport culture, the people that live and work in the area, and a town that was immediately recognizable. When I watched the 2025 film, I wasn't even aware that this was Southport, North Carolina until halfway through. And the 2025 film could have given us at least one local feeling character. Stevie does not count, not because she's ultimately the killer, but because she has zero character development and almost no screen time. The other characters feel more like someone from San Francisco or LA than a Southport native. They feel like characters in a script and actors in a movie, not a real person. I didn't notice it on my first watch, but once seeing the aspect of community in the original, I realized the 2025 film was terribly lacking in Southport culture. Even the church side plot is done poorly. They chose the wrong denomination. Anyone from Southport is aware of the rumors surrounding the Mormon lodges dotting the coast. True or false, that would have worked much better in this movie. Little things like that is what reveal the writers' lacking understanding of what made the original great. I mean, when I watched the original and I saw that opening scene, although I haven't been to any beauty pageants in Southport, I have been to plays down there, and that's exactly what they feel like. The 2025 I Know What You Did Last Summer is a meh movie on its own, but with knowledge of the original, it's really bad. The new film is merely a reskinned version of the original, except this time with unlikable characters, boring subplots that lead nowhere, the disrespecting of the original cast, and an uninteresting killer. There's nothing nonsensical about the movie, it's just simply forgettable. I keep having having to rewatch scenes to refresh my memory despite recently watching it because my brain keeps zoning out from boredom. I would certainly not recommend the new film nor watch it again because I could just watch a better version of it, which is the original, I Know What You Did Last Summer, where a group of 4 friends make a terrible decision and a damning pact that leads to a looming threat, both physical and mental, and a mystery that intrigues the viewer and leaves them guessing about the intentions of other characters. That is a movie worth your time and money. And that is a movie you will want to watch again because it's good. I was really disappointed with the 2025 film because I think it simply just feels cheap. Feels like they needed a little bit of money, and this seemed like something they could just throw together, get it over with, and make a cash grab based upon nostalgia and a pre-existing fan base. It's sad too because Southport actually really does have a steep culture when it comes to murder mysteries and ghosts. Captain Charlie was a huge thing when I was working and living in the Southport area, and though I'm not there now, if anyone does visit, I would highly recommend going on the ghost tours that they do around 7 or 8 o'clock at night. The woman who runs it does a full Victorian getup. She uses an oil lit lamp. You're walking around in the dark, you're hearing about all these murders that have taken place and the ghost stories going on. And it's sad because the 2025 film could have easily used those aspects, but clearly they didn't care. I have not yet watched the second or third I Know What You Did Last Summer. I am excited to watch it. Let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of these movies, if you saw the 4th one that came out in 2025, or if you didn't even know it existed. And thank you for watching, my freaky freaks, and remember,
I'll think of you when I'm not here, 'cause thinking of people makes them seem near. The friends who know you, love you cheerfully, I do too.